Welcome to this explainer. Look, right now, as we speak, there is an absolutely massive, high-stakes geopolitical chess match playing out across the globe. We're talking about a fierce realignment, an intense battle for control over the Eastern Mediterranean trade routes. Today, using some incredibly detailed foundational source material from the Sunophiles website, we are going to break down exactly how all this regional maneuvering ties directly into a much larger global struggle for trade dominance. You are not going to want to miss this.
So here is our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the global corridor clash. Then, America's legislative squeeze. Third, the economics of maritime choke points. Fourth, the shift from legacy to blue homeland. Fifth, the Lebanese diplomatic front. And finally, forging alternative strategic paths.
All right, let's dive right into Section 1, the global corridor clash, U.S. versus China.
To really get what is happening in the Mediterranean, we actually have to zoom out first. We have to recognize that the United States and China are currently locked in a geopolitical war. But, it's not being fought with traditional weapons. It is being fought with infrastructure. The logic is simple. Control the trade routes, and you control the future of global power. On one side of the ring, you have China's Belt and Road Initiative. This is all about heavy physical infrastructure. Think massive ports, hard routes, and huge lending to physically connect Asia to the rest of the world. Now, countering this, you have the US-backed India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor, or IMEC. IMEC takes a totally different angle. It leans hard into digital connectivity, financial integration, and what Western nations pitch as a more sustainable alternative. It's fascinating because both initiatives represent fundamentally different philosophies on how to shape global commerce.
Now, you have to look at the sheer scale difference between these two strategies, because it is honestly staggering. China's Belt and Road Initiative, it spans over 170 countries, and we are talking about investments estimated to exceed $8 trillion. That's trillion with a T. It's about cementing real, physical infrastructure dependencies across multiple continents. Contrast that with the G7's counter-effort, which is mobilizing roughly $600 billion. So, while Beijing is casting this massive global web prioritizing rapid, heavy physical builds, Washington and its allies are betting on IMEC for a tighter, more targeted economic integration of about 20 countries. They're prioritizing regulatory alignment and digital frameworks over sheer concrete volume.
Moving right along to Section 2, America's legislative squeeze, bypassing Ankara.
So, how do these massive global corridor strategies actually hit the ground in the Eastern Mediterranean? Well, it happens through deliberate, calculated legislative maneuvering. Back in 2019, the Menendez-Rubio Act marked a major pivot. It signaled a really decisive step away from Turkey as the primary U.S. ally in that region. Fast forward to 2023, and the IMEC was officially announced, and it entirely excluded Turkey from its planned network. No Turkey at all. And looking ahead to 2026, the proposed Eastern Mediterranean Gateway Act seeks to deepen an exclusionary alliance between Israel, Greece, and Cyprus. It's basically completing a step-by-step trajectory engineered by Washington to completely bypass Ankara.
This isn't just paperwork either. Washington's strategy fundamentally abandoned Turkey's traditional role as the unquestioned guardian of NATO's southern flank. And the real-world impacts? They have been severe. The United States lifted a long-standing arms embargo on Cyprus, which completely shifted the local balance of power. On top of that, Washington slapped sanctions on Turkey over its defense procurement choices, literally kicked Ankara out of the advanced F-35 fighter jet program, and, at the same time, attempted to draw Egypt into this new exclusionary Mediterranean alliance. So what we're looking at here is a comprehensive systemic containment. It's way more than just everyday diplomatic friction.
Which brings us to Section 3, Economics of Maritime Choke Points, the enduring power of waterways. You might be wondering, why is there such an intense fight over these specific patches of water in the first place? Well, despite all our modern focus on overland routes and high-tech railways, control over the water still dictates global economic survival. It's that simple. The Strait of Hormuz, the Strait of Malacca, the Bab el-Mandeb, these are the indispensable arteries of global commerce. If you control these maritime gates, you essentially hold the keys to the world's most critical commodities, manufactured goods, and energy resources. For the big state actors, making sure they have unimpeded access through these narrow little straits is absolutely 100% an imperative for national security.
And this geographic reality feeds directly into that broader superpower conflict we talked about earlier. Here is a massive reality check. The overwhelming majority of Gulf energy exports, they don't actually go to Europe. They flow east. They go straight toward Asian markets, specifically fueling China's immense industrial economy. So, any disruption to these critical waterways, like the recent geopolitical escalations we've seen near the Bab al-Mandab, that directly threatens these massive energy flows. This dynamic explains exactly why Beijing has a huge long-term strategic interest in bypassing American control of these maritime gates. They are actively seeking alternative routes to guarantee their own energy security, regardless of Western naval dominance.
All right, Section 4. Legacy to Blue Homeland. Turkey's strategic pivot.
So how is Turkey reacting to being boxed in by all of this? Well, they are currently undergoing a defining doctrinal shift. Historically, if we look back at its Ottoman geographic legacy, Turkey basically functioned as a marginal buffer. It was a barrier separating Europe from the Middle East, mostly just absorbing regional shocks without aggressively shaping the wider system. But today, Turkey's modern maritime doctrine flips that script entirely. Ankara now views itself as an assertive, indispensable regional power. They are determined to proactively defend their sovereign energy assets and actively dictate the geopolitical reality of the Eastern Mediterranean.
They've even given this assertive posture a name. It's formally known as the Blue Homeland Doctrine. Ankara deployed this specific maritime strategy as a direct countermove to being deliberately excluded from Western-backed regional alliances. Think of it as a really assertive diplomatic and naval push. They want to expand Turkish maritime influence and secure what they firmly view as their rightful continental shelf rights across the Eastern Mediterranean basin. For Turkey, finding and controlling offshore natural gas isn't just some nice economic bonus. No, it's the definitive key to cementing their position as a major independent energy hub, completely free from Western containment and the IMEC framework.
To give you a real sense of just how intense this polarization is, listen to this quote. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has starkly referred to Western companies involved in these exclusionary gas explorations as pirates of the sea. Wow, pirates of the sea. That vivid language shows you exactly how Ankara views the Western and Israeli regional alliances. They don't just see them as everyday economic competitors. They see this as an illegitimate, coordinated attempt to physically box Turkey in and unlawfully strip them of their sovereign maritime rights.
Which leads us to Section 5, the Lebanese diplomatic front, countering the encirclement.
Okay, so how does this macro-level Blue Homeland Doctrine actually look on the ground? Enter Lebanon. Lebanon has rapidly emerged as a crucial secondary arena in this geopolitical struggle. To actively undermine that Israeli-Greek Cypriot alignment, Turkey has deployed some really specific targeted maneuvers right in Beirut. For instance, they've offered technical assistance to Lebanon to help define its exclusive economic zones, a move clearly designed to challenge opposing maritime claims in the Levant basin. And after the tragic Beirut port explosion, Turkey stepped right into that strategic vacuum. They offered their own Mersin port as an alternative logistical hub and simultaneously expanded social, educational, and healthcare initiatives right in the heart of the country.
But why Lebanon, right? Well, the rationale here is rooted in literal national survival. Turkish officials genuinely view the active defense of the Lebanese and Syrian arenas as an existential geopolitical necessity. From their perspective, the security of Beirut, Damascus, and Baghdad is permanently tied to the internal security of southern Turkish cities like Hatay and Izmir. It's a domino effect. If Israeli logistical dominance successfully locks down Lebanon's coastal access, Turkey is terrified that its own southern Mediterranean coastline will be effectively and permanently sealed off from broader regional influence.
Moving to our final section, number 6, forging alternative strategic paths, bypassing the containment.
Now, Turkey isn't just fighting diplomatic proxy battles in the Levant. They are simultaneously forging entirely new, alternative strategic paths to just bypass this Western containment altogether. The logic makes sense. If your maritime routes are restricted by adversarial alliances, what do? You build land corridors. In April 2026, a massive memorandum of understanding was signed to create a rapid land-sea corridor. This is an incredible blueprint. It deliberately links Turkish and Syrian ports, revives the historic Hayes Railway down to Jordan's Aqaba port, and extends the route all the way onward to Saudi Arabia. They are literally trying to draw a brand new trade network flowing from Europe straight to the Gulf.
But listen, building physical railways and ports is only half the equation. You can pour all the concrete you want, but breaking through a coordinated diplomatic wall requires immense diplomatic capital and regional buy-in. And that underscores exactly why President Erdogan's 2026 diplomatic visits to Egypt and Saudi Arabia were so critical. Ankara's leadership knows that to truly dismantle this perceived American-backed containment and to actually make their alternative corridors viable, securing the backing of powerhouses like Cairo and Riyadh is an absolute necessity.
So, taking a step back to look at the geopolitical horizon of the Eastern Mediterranean, from the multi-trillion-dollar infrastructure clash between the US and China, down to Washington's legislative maneuvers right over to the proxy diplomacy in Lebanon and Turkey's bold new railway blueprints, the map of global trade is being actively rewritten right before our eyes. Before we wrap, I want to sincerely thank the Sunophiles website for providing the comprehensive data and foundational analysis that made this explainer possible today.
And finally, I want to leave you with a provocative thought to chew on. Will these new, highly ambitious land corridors actually succeed in bypassing the historical maritime choke points that have defined global trade for centuries? Or, when all is said and done, will raw control of the sea continue to dictate the survival and dominance of global powers? Really think about that one. Hey, if you enjoyed this explainer and you want to keep learning about the hidden macro forces shaping our world, please make sure to hit that subscribe button to get all our latest updates. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I will see you next time.